G'day everyone, welcome to another video by myself, Andrew DFT. And of course, welcome to part 2 of the Destiny Auto Rifle tutorial. So when we left off, of course, we had most of this section of the gun already built, and now we're going to go off ahead and add in all the front features, a barrel, a magazine, the ability to actually have the magazine come in and out, and to finish off this gun. So we'll jump right into it, we won't delay because we've got a lot to cover, so let's get in and get started. Alright, so to continue, go ahead and cut off this section here. This is going to be a piece we're going to add right under the parts we've just completed. So once you've got the template, you're going to make 2 pieces of foam, but we're going to make it a bit thinner, so you can add a depth line about 3/4 of the way through the foam towards the textured side, and then go ahead and cut it in half, making it thinner. You can then grab this middle dashed line and actually draw that out into the center of the object. This is going to act as the top of our bevel line, so we're going to add a depth line to make sure we know where our 2 points of interest are. Then you can grab a nice sharp craft blade and go ahead and slice off that edge nice and cleanly. This is going to give us a far more 3D appearance, so when we glue it in, it will look a bit more interesting. But to finish this piece off, we're actually going to go back to the template and cut out the 2 rectangle sections marked there. This is going to act as the parts which will be detail, which we'll score in and heat treat later. So all you need to do is draw them in manually using the a ruler or a straight edge, and then glue it into position. It should slot perfectly in to the back there. On to the next piece. We'll go ahead and cut out this rectangle / circle, oval, whatever, piece out of the template and transfer it onto 3mm foam, creating 2 sections. What you can then do is grab the template, lay it into position, mark out where it should be in real space, we know, and then go ahead and glue it right back into those drawn lines. Next, we'll jump into this major section, which will of course be the ammo area. So what we'll do is we'll cut out the template, transfer it onto foam, being sure to flip it so you get a left and a right. Now you'll see this dashed lines, which of course indicate a beveled edge. This is going to be a rather significant one, so do take your time. First in, apply the top line, and then add the depth line about halfway through the foam. Nothing further than that. Then grab the nice sharp craft blade and very carefully go through it. It is a bit more of an extended beveled edge, so it might require you to take your time, but as long as you've got a nice sharp craft blade, you should slice through it, no issue at all. Now to make sure this all fits in correctly, you're going to lay it down into position and actually trace out the line. You're then going to grab the handguard area and actually make sure you have enough space in there, and then grab the template of the ammo and put that in about 1 inch higher to where the actual template ends. This way we know where it all sits in relative space to each other, and then you can simply cut off / out that extra area where of course the ammo magazine will go, and then glue on the top segment, which of course will hold it and house it in there nice and safely. Moving on, we'll go ahead and cut out this section here. This is going to be another piece of detail that will be added just above the point we just completed. All you need to do is grab that template, transfer it onto foam, flip it once so you get a left and a right, then add a depth line about halfway through the foam, because we're actually going to cut this piece in half to make it a bit thinner and sit just below that housing ammo magazine area we just did. What you can then do is, after you've done that section, is go ahead and cut out this piece of detail from the template, transfer that onto 3mm foam, pretty much like you just did with the other one, and then glue it right dead smack there in the middle. Now the piece should be all good and ready to glue straight into position. If it doesn't fit in 100%, just trim a few millimeters to make it fit. Now onto some bigger pieces. We'll grab the lower section here and cut it free from the template. Then go ahead, transfer it onto foam, being sure to flip it to get the left and the right side, and we'll go ahead and start adding in the main details in the beveled edge. So cut down the dashed line, transfer that on where needed, and then go ahead and add a depth line about halfway through this foam. Now this is a long beveled edge we're going to have to do, so take your time in slicing through it, follow the edges, stick to the lines, and you should come out with a relatively nice piece. Just do it in segments to allow the nice curvature to actually really sink in and get that look and feel you're after. Now what you're going to do is cut the template even further to get rid of these middle sections so you can transfer in this interior line. This will of course be a scored section, which will heat up and give some detail later. But transfer that in and finish it off by dragging the edge down, and then simply go and glue the piece of detail into the position. Then piece it kind of back together, and you'll see we have this kind of small piece sitting down the bottom mark there. What you want to do is grab a piece of foam the same thickness of that and rather long, and cut a giant slab. You can then line it up on the bottom of this segment and draw it off, and then cut off where it should end. Add in the tiny pieces of detail marked here, and you should have a nice piece that wraps around, adds that nice piece of design, and sits a bit above the whole entire piece. Now time for the big boys. Go ahead and grab the giant slab you can see here, which of course is the front main detail section. Go ahead and transfer the template onto a piece of foam, flip it so you get the left and the right, and we'll start to break apart and add in these beveled edges. Transfer the lines, of course, from the template onto the main slab of foam, then grab the depth line about halfway through as well. Once you've got that both laid in, you can go ahead and bevel it off. Take your time. You will need to change your blade after each individual piece because these are rather long cuts. You're going to run the blade pretty dull quite fast. What you can then do is grab the interior section once it's free from those perimeter lines and go ahead and transfer that into the middle of the slab we've just done and lay it out with a nice directional drawn in line there. Once you've got that in, you can then go ahead and actually cut this internal piece directly out of the foam. You can then add a depth line halfway through the foam and actually cut it in half. We want to make this a bit thinner so it has a nice terraced effect and give us a far more 3D appearance. Now before you do anything else, we'll go ahead and add in all the details. So cut apart the individual segments from the template and then just simply use it as a negative transfer to apply the lines in where needed. We're going to do this for all the individual segments that I'm showing you here, nothing extra, so just make sure they all go in nice and carefully and are relative to the spacing. With this internal section here, we can actually go ahead and transfer that onto a few 3mm pieces of foam, so we have two sections, both the left and the right. You can then go ahead and grab this top section here, this bridge, and actually transfer in this beveled line, the one marked with the dashes, and we're actually going to cut this off once you've added the depth line in. This is just going to round off the design and give it a bit more of a 3D appearance, but you need to do this before we actually glue in the main section. But once you've gone ahead and got rid of those 90-degree angles, you can go ahead and glue in that piece that we cut off earlier and then glue in this whole entire section, being sure to make sure it is nice and horizontal and lays in there perfectly with everything else. You might have some overhang, which is very natural because it just happens when you do these by freehand. Just simply cut those off so it's nice and flush, and you should have a very nice looking design at the moment. But we're not done just yet. The next step was we're going to go back to that top bridge section and actually cut off this little triangle. We can then go ahead and transfer that onto a few 3mm pieces of foam, so that way we can actually lay them in just to give it another piece of depth and levels. Nothing too difficult. You can then grab this template here, which is of course the Handguard trigger area, and go ahead and transfer it onto foam, flip it so you get the left and the right, and then simply glue those two pieces together, making sure that they do sit there relatively flush. You can then go ahead and start to glue this into position. It might not fit 100% flush, just trim off the back piece just to make sure it sits in there nicely, and once you've got it fitting, go ahead and glue it into position. Now once that is actually set in there nicely, we can then go ahead and start working on the magazine. Now the magazine is going to take you a bit. It's just got a lot of levels to really give it a nice intricate piece of detail. But if you are wanting to put it in as removable, you are going to need to add an extra inch to the top. You can see I've added this piece of paper in. Simply do that and then transfer it onto the foam, giving us the two sides, and then go ahead and test fit it. It should fit in perfectly, but you can go mark off where it exactly reaches the limit, because that's where we know the end of the detail is going to need it to be applied. So go ahead and start to break apart the template. We'll grab this internal segment here, transfer that onto the foam, some nice 3mm, and then go ahead and actually glue it into position. It should reach right up to the back. If you do have some overhang, of course, where we marked that line, you can simply cut it off so that way it sits flush with the end point. You can then break apart the template even further and slowly start to build up those layers to really give us the nice 3D appearance we want. And once you paint this up and dry brush it, it should stand out relatively well. Remember, if there is any overhang, just keep trimming it off to make sure everything sits nice and flush and relative to itself. Now this is going to take some time. You just want to carefully break apart these templates and build up these layers, making sure that your symmetry is on point. So always do the left and the right at the same time with each individual step to make sure you are getting it right, because the last thing you want to do is stick it down on one side the right way and then stick it down the wrong side on the other. It does happen, believe me. You just need to take your time and slowly progress through each individual stage at the same time to make sure it all works. Now what we're doing here is we're cutting apart some of the smaller details and applying them in. You can do this if you want, or you can just score it. It's up to you. I like to put in all these tiny details just because they do become rather nice. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to add in this bevel line, and then add a depth line about halfway through one of the individual layers. Then go ahead and grab a nice sharp craft blade and simply slice off that section, making sure it finishes there nice and cleanly, but you're only doing this to the one side, the front facing side. You can then add a vertical line like you can see on the template to break up this section, and then go ahead and cut out the template to make this kind of square part that sits in here. Just simply draw it in position. But that's the magazine done and dusted. Now we'll move on to another layer. We're going to actually have to add another section, which is of course the extension for the butt area. What you can do is grab the template and we're going to transfer in these bevel lines, add that in, and then add the depth line halfway through the foam, and then go ahead and cut off all the segments, making sure you do it as cleanly as possible, as this is the key piece of design. You want it to look as best as you can. Then grab the template, cut out this internal segment here, and then transfer that onto some 3mm foam. We're then going to actually just use the template as a negative space to draw on where it should sit, and then simply glue that back into position. Once that's all sorted, you can then go actually and glue this onto the piece. If you line it up like I am doing here and apply it into the same kind of position, you shouldn't have any problem. You're just gluing it in, and it should really support and hold that butt piece and give it a far more durable integrity as a whole. Alright, so it's barrel time. I'm using wood dowels just for now. You can use PVC pipe or whatever you prefer. But the main idea is you're going to grab it, draw out the outline for where this circle piece should sit. Once you've got that outline, you can then go ahead with a craft blade and actually cut those out, and maybe about an inch in. I then go ahead and fill the sections up with a lot of hot glue, and then simply just put the piece in, make sure it's completely lined and drilled in there for an inch. It's going to overspill with all the glue, but just clear that up. And once you've got both of those sitting in there nicely and they cool down, they're going to be in there forever. They're not really going to break unless you intentionally try to rip them out. But like I said, whatever you prefer, wooden or PVC pipe, it's completely up to you. But it should sit in there relatively nice. Then what you're going to do is go ahead and score all the lines we've added. All the pen lines on this design are going to be scored. And that means you're running the blade through the top of the surface to break the foam. Then what you're going to do is, after you've done that all, is run a heat gun over this whole piece. It's going to seal it, it's going to condense it, it's going to bring up those nice lines and really add the detail to those sections that we were wanting. Now a trick I like to do is, of course, you can see the layers between the foam, which is kind of hideous. You can then go grab some just general air dry clay and go ahead and start filling the gaps. I'll put a link in the end of the video, as well as this thumbnail to the technique and the video tutorial for that. And then you can go seal the foam by literally applying some PVA glue or some plastic dip, whatever you prefer as your sealant. So that's it, it's all completed. Remember, this is just a very basic beginner's tutorial, so now you can go off and be creative and apply a whole bunch of additional features that you want to make it fit your personal design, or to meet another design that you're after. And I highly recommend you to be creative. It's the coolest way to take something that was already in existence and make it your own, personalize it, change up the color, change up maybe the way the magazine looks. If you don't want a rectangle one, you can make it a bit more, I don't know, diagonal or something. There are a few different customizations out there for magazine, but that's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is be creative. So I hope you enjoyed the build. I know this one was a long time coming, and I'm very happy to finally got it out, even if it is a very simple and basic one for a lot of you beginners. And of course, once you've completed them, I would love to see it, whether it's just the gun by itself or in a costume photo shoot. You can share those images with me on my Facebook fan page, and I would love to see them and give you some really fun critique. i.e., I'm going to tell you it looks like shit. I'm kidding, I wouldn't do that. But yes, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps me know that you guys enjoy this content so I don't make bad stuff. And if you think you've got friends who might want to make this, drop them a link. Just let them see how easy it is to create something cool like this so they can do it themselves. We can have a whole community with auto rifles in their hands. And until I upload the next video, catch you later.